This is an overview of the anatomy of the GI tract wall as presented by Jeff Flack, Meg Hunt, Ashley Cobert, and Nathan Etheridge, ATSU Physician Assistant Program. The GI tract from the esophagus to the large intestine is a tube composed of 4 concentric layers. From deep, the lining of the lumen, to superficial, the external covering, these layers are the mucosa, submucosa, muscularis, and adventitia or serosa. Here's another image of the layers. The esophagus. The esophagus is a muscular tube which is anatomically divided into 3 distinct regions: the cervical, thoracic, and abdominal. The esophagus connects the pharynx to the stomach, lies posterior to the trachea, and passes through the diaphragm. Overall, it is between 18 and 26 centimeters long. Although the esophagus has 4 layers, it is lacking a serosa. The 4 layers of the esophagus are the innermost mucosa, the submucosa, the muscularis propria, and the adventitia. The lacking of serosa allows esophageal tumors to spread more easily and makes them harder to treat surgically. The missing serosal layer also makes luminal disruptions more challenging to repair. The mucosa. The 3 sublayers are the mucosal membrane, which is made of non-keratinized squamous epithelium, the lamina propria, which is a thin layer of connective tissue, and the muscularis mucosa, a thin layer of longitudinally, irregularly arranged smooth muscle fibers. The submucosa contains connective tissue as well as lymphocytes, plasma cells, nerve cells called Meissner's plexus, a vascular network called Heller plexus, and mucous glands. The esophageal glands are small glands which have an insinuae arranged like grapes on a stem of mucus type. Their secretions are important in esophageal clearance and tissue resistance to acid. The muscularis propria is responsible for motor function. The upper 5 to 33% is composed exclusively of striated muscle. At the distal 33% is composed of smooth muscle. In between, there is a mixture of both, called the transition zone. Functionally, the transition zone can be observed with mammometry as a region where there is no significant contraction amplitude during a peristaltic contraction that travels down the body of the esophagus. The adventitia is an external fibrous layer that covers the esophagus, connecting it with neighboring structures. It is composed of loose connective tissue and contains small vessels, lymphatic channels, and nerve fibers. The stomach. The stomach is a hollow, distendable, muscular organ located in the left upper abdominal quadrant. The size of the stomach varies greatly amongst individuals. However, on average, the human stomach has a near-empty volume of approximately 45 milliliters and can expand to hold approximately 2 to 3 liters. Anatomically, the stomach is divided into 4 regions: the cardia, or cardiac, the fundus, the body, and the antrum. The stomach contains 2 sphincters, the lower esophageal or cardiac sphincter and the pyloric sphincter. The lower esophageal sphincter functions to allow passage of material into the stomach from the esophagus and to prevent backflow or reflux of stomach contents into the esophagus. The pyloric sphincter is the junction between the stomach and the first section of the small intestine, the duodenum. 2 important landmarks of the external stomach are the greater and lesser curvatures. The greater curvature demarcates the inferior portion of the stomach and serves as an attachment point of the greater omentum. The lesser curvature demarcates the superior medial portion of the external stomach and serves as the attachment point of the lesser omentum. The muscularis mucosa of the stomach is comprised of 3 layers. The outermost is the longitudinal layer, the middle is the circular layer, and the innermost is the oblique layer. The 3 muscular layers allow for a state of constant, gentle agitation, which facilitates the expulsion of glandular secretions as well as the mechanical mixing of chyme. The rugae, or folds of the stomach, allows for expansion. As the stomach fills, the rugae gradually smooth out, permitting distension. The mucosal surface of the stomach is comprised of simple columnar epithelium that contains millions of deep channels called gastric pits. The gastric pits are lined with columns of specialized cells called gastric glands. Gastric glands are specialized cells within the gastric pits and include parietal cells, chief cells, mucous neck cells, enteroendocrine cells, or G cells, and enterochromaffin cells. The parietal cells secrete hydrochloric acid and intrinsic factor. The chief cells secrete pepsinogen and gastric lipase. The mucous neck cells secrete alkaline mucus and bicarbonate. The enteroendocrine cells secrete gastrin, and the enterochromaffin cells secrete histamine. The small intestine. The small intestine is the longest section of the GI tract and is located between the pylorus of the large intestine. It is comprised of 3 sections, including the duodenum, the jejunum, and the ileum. Overall, it is approximately 6 meters or 20 feet long and functions in digestion and absorption. The histology of the small intestine. The surface of the small intestine is increased by about 150 times through villi and microvilli, which act to multiply its capacity for absorption. Villi are finger-like projections of the mucosal layer and are comprised of columnar epithelium. Microvilli are even smaller finger-like projections lining the villi. Brush border enzymes are found along the microvilli and aid in digestion. Goblet cells are found in the interspace between enterocytes. They secrete mucus, which aids in lubrication. Beneath the villi's singular layer of cells are capillaries of the bloodstream and the lymphatic system. These capillaries allow nutrients produced by digestion to travel to the cells of the body. Simple sugars and amino acids pass through the capillaries to enter the bloodstream. Fatty acids and glycerol pass through the lymphatic system. Peyer's patches are lymphoid follicles that are located under the mucosa of the small intestine, especially the ileum. The duodenum is the first section of the small intestine. It receives contents from the stomach via the pyloric sphincter. It also receives secretions from the liver, gallbladder, and pancreas via the pancreatic and common bile ducts. Brunner's glands are found only in the submucosa of the duodenum. They secrete an alkaline mucus that neutralizes the acidic chyme coming from the stomach. The ileum is the longest section at approximately 12 feet. It terminates at the ileocecal valve, which functions to regulate the movement of chyme into the large intestine and prevents against backflow. The large intestine, or the colon. The gross anatomy of the colon starts as the jejunum enters the colon at the cecum. From the cecum, the colon continues proximally as the ascending colon. It then makes a left turn inferiorly to the liver at the hepatic flexure. It then crosses the abdomen as the transverse colon. It makes another turn at the splenic flexure. It continues distally as the descending colon before becoming the S-shaped sigmoid colon. The colon finally terminates at the rectum. The colon has the same wall layers found in other parts of the small intestine: the mucosa, the submucosa, the muscularis propria, and the serosa. Unique to the colon, however, are longitudinal muscles that gather into strips called tinea coli. This creates bulging sacs called haustra. Diverticuli are outpouchings of the wall of the colon. They occur between the muscularis propria layer of the wall of the colon. They are thought to be caused by a diet low in fiber. It is estimated that by the age of 60, over half of people have diverticuli. This can cause problems as food particles can become lodged in the opening of the hole and cause inflammation. The diverticuli can also rupture and cause bleeding.
Here are the references for our presentation.